Welcome to you both.
Okay, that works. So, good evening, Mr. Mayor O'Connor and also Council. My name is Bill Tyler. I'm the fire chief here in Novato. And I thought it was important with the fires down in Los Angeles that started back on January 7th that we talk a little bit about those fires. We have shared messaging with the community, both myself and Tony, through joint communications, but we just want to share with you some perspectives, some lessons learned, what we're doing and what we need to do going forward. But in Los Angeles, there were over 57,528 acres that were burned, 16,255 structures destroyed, and 28 fatalities. So what we witnessed was not a vegetation fire. What we witnessed was an urban conflagration down in Southern California that has been described as an unfightable fire. These are human-caused fires under red flag conditions, rapidly expanding due to extreme low humidity and winds, and also dry receptive vegetation, sending brands and embers showering into neighborhoods, on homes and businesses. These homes ignite by embers landing on vegetation immediately adjacent to the structures with direct flame impingement. It's also brands and embers that fly into the structure through open vents, combustible construction in the eaves, etc. Sparked in the gutter with debris on roof coverings and on decks and patio furniture and so on. There are many, many vulnerabilities in our current built environment. So once the homes begin to ignite under those conditions, there's a bit of a domino effect because of the close proximity of the structures. The radiant heat from one structure that's fully engulfed will threaten the next because they're in close proximity, and that will cast even more brands and embers showering and lifted up into the convection column, landing long distances away, starting new fires. So can that same thing happen in Novato? And unfortunately it can. There's a tremendous amount of work that we're currently doing to try and protect, reduce, mitigate those types of threats and hazards here in Novato. And I just want to share a couple of things with you. Through the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and Measure C funds, we've conducted nearly 19,000 roadside and full assessments of homes and HOAs since the start of the program. We've also spent a tremendous amount of funds on grants once those inspections are done, where homeowners can learn about what they need to do, apply for the grants as an incentive to harden their home and to change their vegetation. Last year, we spent over $950,555 on matching grants. And so far this year, we've surpassed this point. We're at $654,000 so far. We've also had chipper programs where we go into the neighborhoods and bring a chipper, and individual homeowners can bring vegetation out. They do their own clearing, they pile it, and we chip it. We've had 6 weeks this year, both April, May, June, and August, also September and October. We average about 120 pickups per week with that. We've also started the Greater Novato Shaded Fuel Break, and that is a shaded fuel break all the way around the entire city. It's between 100 and 300 feet directly behind people's homes. We remove dead and down, we limb up trees, we cut the grass, and that actually is approximately 17,000 acres in phase 1 and 2 that we've completed so far. Other fuel breaks in parks that we complete, over 100 acres, within smaller fuel breaks where we target open space areas and lands, both in city open space and county open space, is ongoing. We've cleared evacuation route projects. Together, there's approximately 86 miles of road in Novato in our jurisdiction, in both county and city-owned roadways. And so far, we've cleared about 43 miles of that total. So what are we as a community to do? There's several important steps that each and every one of us can take. And that begins with the homeowners learning more about their own homes. We want them all to sign up to get assessments. These are free assessments. And so we would come to their homes and talk about where the risks and hazards are with the individuals. We give them a prescription about what they can immediately do and then give them access to those matching local grant funds to make those changes. You know, insurance companies are now beginning to recognize existing homes that are being built to a higher level of hardening. It's known as Wildfire Prepared Home and Wildfire Prepared Home Plus standards. So achieving those designations makes it very likely that someone can receive insurance coverage from existing admitted insurers. And some insurance companies are even providing discounted rates on existing or new policies. So we also can come together as neighborhoods and form fire-wise neighborhoods. Novato Fire staff will come to each one of those neighborhoods and help them get started. We'll do an assessment of the entire neighborhood, and we'll put together a plan with them on how they can approach this, not as individuals, but as a neighborhood. They can also sign up for additional chipper days and prepare their homes. So far, we have 14 Firewise neighborhoods in Novato. The public has given a lot of support to these measures so far, and we really hope that they will continue with that. We're 5 years now into a 10-year program where at the end there'll be over $200 million that will be brought in for prevention and mitigation. So what can the city council do? Soon there's going to be brand new fire hazard severity maps that the state is going to provide for local areas. They've already provided them for the state. And we anticipate that the hazard will be identified greater than it was before. So you can help work with us to get the word out to allow for proper public comment before those maps are adopted. There's also additional in-depth presentations that the fire district would like to bring. There's a lot of tools that are out that we've been doing assessments, evacuation routes, pathways where we learn about how fire can come into a community. We have, because of those 19,000 assessments, we have really good data on what our existing building stock is. And we also have predicted areas where we could reach a potential conflagration due to the proximity of structures to structures. So we want to share all that information with you. And then I really think that the future insurability of our homes and neighborhoods are going to depend upon that. Lastly, this is a code adoption year, and there will be an opportunity for the city and the county to weigh in on any additional mitigation and any additional requirements that we may want to look at as a community. And I would just ask that you direct your staff to work with the fire district closely, as you have in the past through community development and otherwise, so that we can come up with the right set of requirements to help protect our communities. I'm going to turn it over to Tony.
Thanks, Bill. Good evening, Mayor O'Connor and members of the council. My name is Tony Williams. I'm the general manager of the North Marin Water District. We're an independent special district that was formed in 1948. We not only provide water services to the greater Novato community, but also to portions of West Marin. We're grateful for our relationship with the Novato Fire District. We work together to ensure that our water distribution system meets the needs of the district for fighting fires amongst the services that we provide. Earlier this fiscal year, we kicked off an update to our Novato system master plan. And that master plan will look at our entire system and how we can make improvements. We'll be working closely with Novato Fire on what additional improvements we can make to the system, what projects we can do to enhance firefighting capabilities. I'll also note that that master plan is going to also look at other natural hazards that we face, earthquakes, landslides, and things like that. So it's a really good opportunity to kind of refresh what we think we are capable of doing. We also will be updating, this is a federal requirement, at least for now, our emergency response plan. It's an EPA requirement, and we'll have specific chapters on fire scenarios, earthquakes, whatnot. We also will be turning to the Novato Fire District to help with that. I want to talk about our water system just to educate you all and members of the public. We have 30 water storage tanks located throughout our system, and those are located within 4 elevation zones, actual elevations in height above sea level. And in total, those tanks can hold 35 million gallons of water. If you consider the southernmost tank that our major supplier, Sonoma County Water Agency, has in Petaluma, you can add another 12 million gallons to that. And that tank becomes critical in providing supply into our system. But it takes 25 pump stations to pump that water, not only to pressurize the system, but to pump the water into those various tanks. Not only to get pressure to our customers, but also to make sure there's pressure at the 2,900 plus fire hydrants located throughout our system. There are two key pump stations within the system: the San Marin pump station towards the north of town, and then the Linwood pump station in the south part of town. Those two pump stations are our largest pump stations, and what they do is make sure that our Zone 1 water, our lowest elevation water, gets to our Zone 2 distribution system. And that really has the most storage throughout the whole system. And quite frankly, that's where most people live. And it's also important for those two pump stations to not only fill those tanks, but to get pressure to the Zone 3 pump stations so that those pump stations can bring that water up to the Zone 3 and then eventually Zone 4 tanks. There's actually multi-purposes for that stored water. In any given day, there is a volume that's specifically set aside for firefighting. It's based on a formula, but there's also the volume needed for our customers. And then we always maintain an emergency volume. So there's three sort of competing volumes on any given day. And it's a real challenge to increase that volume beyond those three buckets, if you will, due to water quality issues. You can't let the water sit in the tanks for very long. You have to kind of cycle it through, otherwise we lose our chlorine residual and there's a chance for contamination. But just to echo what Chief Tyler said, the water system is simply not designed to fight an urban wildfire like we saw in Southern California. The level of demand on the system is just beyond what the design standards are. And there are other contributing factors, such as if someone leaves their water on and evacuates their home, or they're from our meter through into their house, that pipeline is damaged, and that water is just free flowing. So there's a lot of issues that I have to deal with. I will point out that we do have other available water supplies for Novato Fire. We have Stafford Lake, which we never let that lake go completely dry except in extreme conditions like in the 1970s drought. But there's always about 300 million gallons available, not only for water supply emergencies, but potentially for firefighting. Right now the lake is full, which is always a good thing. We also have a limited recycled water system that could be used for firefighting as well. Just to echo what the chief said, we have several capital projects that are ongoing right now that will help not only with our overall system, but indirectly have benefits for firefighting. Several pump station projects, and other improvements to make sure there's adequate flow through the system. And I'd just like to thank the city for its past contributions and collaborations on those types of projects. One of the pump stations that we're building right now is the Crest Pump Station, and that was land that we purchased from the city several years ago. So thank you for your continued cooperation, and I think that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'll bring it back to council. Please use the raise hand button if you have any questions. Councilmember Jacobs.
Of those 35 million gallons of water in those tanks, how are they full?
So every night we make sure that we get them as full as, not to the brim. That 35 million is really if the chief reaches out to us or there's a red flag day and we know to fill those to maximum. It's usually around 25 million gallons is on an average day in those tanks. So we keep a little bit of extra space in there.
And are the fire hydrants on a separate water main or water system or anything like that?
No, they're all, it's all one system, so everything's connected to one system. Only San Francisco has a separate water system. I don't think any other place in the country has what San Francisco has.
Okay. And question for Chief Tyler. You said there were 14 neighborhoods you've done assessments of?
There are 14 Firewise neighborhoods, so those are neighbors that have gotten together to do an assessment and work out a plan on how to work together to reduce their risks in their community.
How many neighborhoods, because you guys include all of county and everything, how many neighborhoods are there based on that?
We've divided the city into like 35 neighborhoods.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
You're doing good.
Yeah, but even when I say neighborhood, a Firewise, there could be more than one Firewise group within a neighborhood,
Yeah.
But yeah,
Great.
quite
Thank you.
a few. We're very proud of that, and the citizens should be proud of their efforts as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Farrak.
Thank you so much. This is very timely, and I really appreciate you coming. And I think this is really important information for the public. When I was on the Transportation Authority of Marin, we got a presentation from Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, and they showed us this AI platform that helped with evacuations, and you can like time it at certain times of the day and stuff like that. How do you leverage that, and do you?
Yeah, so that's one of the tools I'd be happy to do a presentation to the council on that we can look at. So it not only does it have real-time information, but there's all different kinds of scenarios that we can put in play. If we have a fire in this location, given this wind condition, temperature, et cetera, it can anticipate what kind of fire spread they'll have and how many areas that will impact, and allows us to pre-plan along with our local law enforcement partners on what intersections would they need to go to help make sure that those are kept clear, for example. So there's a lot of pre-plan opportunities there between fire and law enforcement.
Yeah, I would love for the council to get a briefing on that. That was, I think, one of the most valuable presentations I've seen. And then what about the more like vulnerable areas that have like one way in, one way out? How do you address that? And then also I know, like, for example, with the water, that's what, like a level 4, the 4 water tank. So what, those like one route down and then having the water be high up. So it's, I guess, two separate questions.
Well, with regards to the one way in, one way out, we have a lot of those neighborhoods in town. I mean, people love to live in areas where they don't necessarily have through traffic, where it can be quieter and that kind of thing. And so it can be a challenge. I can tell you sometimes when we'll do community development projects or new subdivisions are being placed in, we'll look to try and make a connection, some sort of connection between the two that can be maybe gated but opened if you needed a second route. So we're always looking for ways to improve on that type of exiting. The bad news is you only have one way out, but the good news is you know exactly where you got to go to get out, right? And so it's important to do a lot of vegetation management and clearances around those areas. It's important to exercise as a neighborhood, to do evacuation planning and training, and we work with law enforcement on that regularly.
So I'm not sure I understood the question about the tank.
Yeah, so is there less water when the higher up it goes because it's filtering through like water tank 1, water tank 2, water tank 3, water tank 4?
No, not necessarily, but I will say that with the exception of like the Buck Institute, which is one of our zone 4, like one of the highest elevations, they have a very unique storage. They have a lot of storage because of the facility, but some of the other zone 4 areas are very small neighborhoods, so they have pretty small tanks, but those tanks are filled, independently of the rest of the tanks. So, but they would drain relatively fast if there was, more than a couple structures on fire. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Eklund.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you both for a great presentation or presentations. We couldn't do anything in our community without fire and water, so our fire control. Anyway, so a couple of questions first, Bill, if you don't mind. Or anyway, so I have heard a lot about the clearance of 5 feet all the way around structures, and that some communities are mandating that. Some are saying that's optional, that's preferred. And your insurance company might be able to give you a reduction of your costs if you do clear everything up for 5 feet. And I've seen pictures of what it looks like, and it's a stark reality of it's completely different than what our community looks like now. So can you help us understand how you're applying that concept without necessarily destroying neighborhoods, or is that the only thing that we're going to be able to do in our community?
Yes, thank you for the question. So what you're referencing is something that's commonly called Zone 0.
Right.
It's the first 5 feet against any of the structures. And so the state of California right now, the state fire marshal's office is coming up with regulations. There's a regulatory process where they come up with the definition of what that actually is and whether or not you're allowed to have any combustible materials within that. Once they come up with that definition and submit that, that will be a state requirement in all state responsibility areas. It will apply first to new construction, and then after, I think it's 2 years, it will be required retroactively of other homes. So here in Novato, this is the local responsibility area, and that is not required by the state. So there's an example here and an opportunity for the board that potentially would say, we think that it's so important for the insurability of homes and the protection of homes that we would want to apply or possibly apply Zone 0 in certain areas of local responsibility area, because not all areas are the same.
Right.
But we have seen that fires are going to move, right into areas that you would not normally associate with being the wildland urban interface. So some examples, I don't think it's as stark, as most people would imagine. It is going to require a change in how people look at their homes, but all of the fire stations have been converted to Zone 0. So for example, if you go out to San Marin area, there's beautiful landscaped fire station that is in a suburban neighborhood, so it has that look to it. But actually, if you go up close and there's pathways you can walk along and take a look at the plants, there is a gravel, non-combustible 5-foot zone that goes all the way around that building. And it's done tastefully with landscape architecture in such a way that you don't really see that it's there. There's some features and plants and things that can kind of hide it. We've also done a commercial one at our Novato Fire Admin building over on Roland Way. And so for years and years, I've gone in and out of that building, looking at the hedges right up against, up to the windows and whatnot. And we went ahead and made a change. We've got native plants, landscapes. There's things that break up the continuity of the fuels, pathways, etc. And now I walk by every day and it looks completely natural and normal to me. So I think most of the thing is going to be changing the paradigm and what people think of as a beautiful, landscaped home. And it's simply, you can have those plants on landscape, you just move it out 5 feet away from the structure. So the opportunity may be for the council to decide if they want to include that type of protection in other areas that it would otherwise not be mandated by state law.
Right, and at some point, I'd love to possibly even have a joint meeting between your fire board and our city council to have a discussion about that, because I think the more minds come together, I think we could work collaboratively to do something that is helps prevent from fires, but also to make things more acceptable to the community.
Yeah, we'd like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And question for water is, so in, first one more question for Bill. I'm also president of my HOA, Point Marin. Would you be willing to or interested in presenting a presentation about what this means to our association of 342 homes?
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. We could actually tape it, and then we can actually send it out to everybody as well.
Yeah.
So
Sounds
that
good.
way everybody would get it regardless of whether they were there or not. And similar with water, sometimes most people, having worked for US EPA for over 35 years, a lot of people don't really realize how important our drinking water is. and having worked with the Safe Drinking Water Act, it's crucial. It determines whether we live or die, and then also what quality of life we have. In communities where they don't necessarily have the full pressure, do we have those areas in Novato where they don't have the full pressure for water?
No, we pretty much meet. There's two different sort of pressure-related criteria. One is basically a flow rate, gallons per minute. So in our commercial areas, basically a lot of zone 1, but parts of zone 2, it's 3,500 gallons per minute for 3 hours. So that's what we try to achieve. As you get into the higher elevations and the more residential areas, it drops down to 1,500 gallons per minute for 3 hours. So that the sizing of the tanks and the pump stations are kind of based on that. So we really don't have any, there are some areas, and mostly in the zone 3 and 4 areas, where we may be slightly under that maximum volume, but in zones 1 and 2, we pretty much hit that criteria throughout.
Okay, great. And I too like to extend a welcome for us to have a joint meeting.
Absolutely.
Because I think, and it's been a long time since City of Novato councils have met with jointly with the special districts. And I think that in a community like ours, it's really important for us to do that so that everybody sees that we are working together.
Absolutely.
And, some cities are full service cities and are fuller, or not all the way full. But in California, there's a lot that are full cities,
right.
A full service city. So, but Novato is always different because the city incorporated a lot later after all the special districts did. So, but anyway, thank you both very much for your incredible work. And please extend a big thank you for all of your staff that work so hard. And I know especially paramedics. Bill, with my mom, 98 years old, we've had to call paramedics quite a bit. And all the paramedics in Marin County are outstanding. So anyway, so thank you both very much.
Thank you. And Councilmember Milk?
Thank you. Again, I want to thank you both for the presentation, but also your leadership's been so effective. Really appreciate it. Definitely see it. And I'm also starting to get a feel for especially the fuel break work is being recognized at the state level and maybe even nationally. So thank you so much. My only question really is any threats to your continued progress? Is there anything that you would like to see that you can't get yet? Or is there any possibility of any funding issues with the change in administration? That's my naive question.
We typically don't rely too heavily on federal funding. We do have a FEMA grant, ironically, we have a small wastewater system in West Marin. We're hoping that last payment request that we've submitted doesn't get held up. But really, there's going to be this balance. I mean, we could quadruple the storage of water and add a separate system for our hydrants. I don't think anyone's capable of paying for that because all that gets passed on to our ratepayers. We're always always looking out for state and federal grant opportunities. And to be honest, the Novato system's pretty robust as far as financial consistency. It's our West Marin system that needs that kind of help. So whenever I go meet with Congressman Huffman or State Senator McGuire or Assemblymember Connolly, it's usually to talk about that system. The one exception would be Stafford Dam. So we're always looking to make improvements to the safety of that dam. And I wish there's actually a state program that's very limiting. It's only for dams that are in bad shape, essentially. So I'd love to see that kind of funding to kind of enhance dam safety. But otherwise, the system in Novato is really good, and I think we have a good financial model to continue to ask the community to pay for that.
Chief Tyler, do you have any comments?
I mean, I think Pat really hit the nail on the head talking about Zone 0. I think it's, people's what they see is beautiful and normal. That's the nut that has to get cracked when it comes to really keeping fire off of the structures. And then, the hardening of the structures itself, it just can be expensive, to do. Everyone needs to replace things over time. You're going to eventually have to replace your roof and your decks and your eaves and your vents, et cetera. And so we hope that when people do that, we do have ordinances now that in certain areas you're required to harden those, but getting people to really take those concrete steps is going to make all the difference, I think. And then with regards to funding, we're very appreciative of the community for the funding that they've provided to us, and especially under Measure C for these. So for the next 5 years, we think that we're going to try and put the funds in the best places to do the most amount of good. We have received a state fund, $1.2 million, to help with the shaded fuel break. As you can imagine, it's very expensive. It's about $8,000 an acre to treat on the graded Novato shaded fuel break. And then upkeep after that is about $3,000 an acre. So that's a lot of money that we're going to need ongoing. So
Yeah, because I think the spark arresters, because I just put a new roof on my house, the spark arresters that fit into the eave holes are supposedly going to avoid any embers coming from that position. Do you recommend that to the community here?
I believe that's a part of a Class A roof assembly, that is required. And so I know I recently had my roof replaced also, and I'm enjoying that protection as well.
Yeah, because there's also ones you could put in the garage that have, so it's honeycomb, it just seals it up, so it's worthwhile. But thank you so much, both of you, again. Very, very well received.
Thank you.
Thank you both for your time. Thank you very much for your work. We really appreciate it. And Chief Tyler, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize your upcoming date and your retirement. Just thank you for your 29 years of service to the Novato community. You've made a tremendous difference, and I look forward to celebrating you here again in the near future. Thank you both.